Aho, YouTube Oyate. YouTube Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, Oyate. And anybody else that's interested, I welcome you, okay? I'm Petukinde this day. I welcome you. Let's have a conversation. I know you can't talk to me, but I will talk at you. How's that? And then you can listen, register, listen to the pronunciation of the words. I'll try to explain the meaning of the words as I go along. Before we start, I'm going to say a quick short prayer, ask Creator to be with us again today, and then we will get going. Hey chituk tero. Ha to kanta kai to. A ke hechit hoi chichikta. Onka Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, wachin hechit ake. Ha de hoya takape. Ha peto ashte chakon yakope. Ha de wopi de chichi. Ha weto hechit hiwonke chi ha wopi de hechit. Ha braketua. Amauke nipte. Ka ke wani to ha haya. Amauke niptonka. Onshonki da po oyateke. Ha dena. Ha ta ako ashteste. Wa oyaka ba aina ochkumte. Echunkumte. Aya hechit ato kantaka hoye chichi. Hat kan je ook japo, oké hon japo aya hechit hoye chichi. O Dakota Iapi de, o Dakota we choch an de, du hewa chen dechin, ha maonepe. Ha hina hede tohaya. Ha onki japo ato kantanka, aya hechit hoye chichi. Ka hechit Dakota, uyakum tera ke Dakota Lakota. Ha hina hechit unshia. Ha chichi da ihakavia. Ha tuwe wa chenya. Ha dena unshiki da okyo. Ha tawa chena ge chante tachan. Aphe wicha was agwicha. Aya heche. Ha petu kede hoye chichi. Ha cha unshima kede gadina. Ayechi tu mi chichi awo. Aya to kantanka. Ha heche hoye chichi. Ho mitakas. Unka, yes. We're just talking about, before we got started, we're talking about a little bit about history, how we lived, how we survived in our territory, in our land, and some individuals that people here talk about back in the day, 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. Who are some of the significant people that people here talk about? And there's certain individuals that come to mind, a couple of them that I'd like to talk about, and it has to do with relatives, wotakuye, that are out there in Dakota, Nakota, Lakota land. Me and one of the Takojas here, the Balbo Takojas, we're talking about an individual names, last names. He was talking about their last name Taylor is registered over there, at least in their cemetery area. The last name Taylor is over there. A Taylor from here, the Taylor family from here. Uhutka, the roots, the ancestry, are down there. And I believe a blacksmith, Mazakaga, from here, their name is down there too. In Santee, Nebraska. How did they get over there? That is yet to be found out, I guess, researched and find out how they got over there. Hohina iwon hadakape naka. To ket wota kuye kindina. Enana kia Iapi. Istoketaha ahi. Dokyataha means from where? They come this way, ahi, they got here. Istokia unkipe. We, some individuals from here, Tokia, where unkipe, we went, we arrived somewhere. How did that happen, you know? I was talking about an individual an individual that lived at Turtle Mountains back in late 1800s, and I have history here in these booklets I showed you before. A well-known historian came up with these booklets. A lot of Dakota history in here as far back as the 1600s, the first colonial days. He has a series of booklets, very important that we keep these alive. The stories, the actual stories, the letters that were written back in those days, what was happening. And in one of these booklets, they talked about an individual that lived in Turtle Mountains. Turtle Mountain, Iapi Kandeche Keapaha. Kea is the turtle. Keapaha. Hohed Dakota, Yakapche. Used to be Dakota. It used to settle there until they got moved to, some of them went to Chinupokpa, here, and in Birdtail, Chakaho, Tina, Birdtail. That reserve was disbanded, taken away. Before that happened, there used to be an individual, head, which has to head tea. Head to Wikinde, Wawayanke Hecha. Wawayanke is the one that scouts the area. Wawayanke. He Uichahu head wanke, Canada, United States. Uichahu. That's the borderline. Uichahu, like a mark. Ichahu, just like on a map. Head there. Hauichas the hobo head yakakap. Okay, he uichahu awakab de akichite wichaka khnikape. Akichite is the soldiers, the military. Wichaka khnikape head uichahu de awakape. They're looking after the border. See, there's nothing criminally is happening or no border crossers or whatever. Hey hobo head yakakap head. Border agents, the riders, they're on horseback. Head ope. Head tohaya opega han 1912 head copy. Ayushta. Hobo chajeki de John Hunter echepe. Washichu chaje. Dakota chajeki awekteje. His English name, registered name was John Hunter. I forget his Dakota name. But he was employed with the border agents, if you want to call it, the ones that look after that border. He retired in 1912, and the story is about him. 1912, he ayushna hobukinde. Han kaakia Montana Iapi hechia uzikia. Hech uzikia hane kuga decha hadi. Han Chanopawakpa heto hanked unkap. Han Wiochpataki yakap. Unka hekta late 1980s or middle of 80s decha Oyanko white bear api hechia wa he ha tokach Okaga Alberta hechita hipe Chiniki Lake singers wichakyap. Rod Hunter ichape hobo chanchacha you heg he tokach what sheep head white bird what sheep don't tokach head hipta kape unach umpe we heard about it unka head Otanka yakape hina iwohda kape head to a Rod Hunter ichap kinde he wohda kapunka hanang he early 1900s, Iapi, Hobo and Decheta, Hikapi, East, we all here, but Hobo, White Bear, Oyankin, Head Hikap. Head to Haya Obo Peach, Hobo de Dakota, Chajeki, Wihinis a Echap Cap, Wihinis a Hatchach Chajatap, Wihinis a the hunter. Head to Haya could head Unga, Ahinonach, Wiochpataki Yakap. He went west. He stayed around White Bear for a while, and then he traveled west. Nobody knew where he went, or he never came back. Tokit Kiyai Hesto Diapshne. Ichipas Hedishnikap. Ha Wood Mountain Ape, the Han Wood Mountain Ape had Oshkati Yohapche, Oshkati Hapkahan, Dakota had Opapi, had rodeo hatch, Dakota Opapi. Rodeo had Shunkal Kan with Chomp, the Hina Dakota Shunkal Kan. Awicha Oba had rodeo had Awicha Hipche. Hetahan de Hetchkame Ayustamahan, Hetahan de Calgary Stampede Api. Hechia is to rodeo de Hechio Hashkamp. Calgary rodeo gekta Dakota wa wiaka pa unajinche. Iteo api ichuba. Ate ya. There used to be a rodeo at Wood Mountain back in the day in the early 1800s. That's the beginnings of the Calgary Stampede. When this John Hunter or Wihinis, when he went to west, he ended up in Calgary, that area. When Calgary Stampede was put there, taken from Wood Mountain and started in Calgary, John Hunter was there, or Wihinis, he was there. And you see photographs of him. I have a photograph somewhere in one of these booklets. They say he was one of the most photographed Dakota chief or photographed chief in Canada back then, because he took a big part in the rodeo and the stampede back in the day when they first founded that rodeo in Calgary. Hohechio peach akape, hey rodeo get opega iteo api ote ichup. He had White Bear da kap head iwoha da kape. Chiniki Lake Singers, Hibha Hunter, Rod Hunter, de Heokane Vota Koini Chesh Ape. When Rod Hunter and his drum group came to White Bear in the 1980s, the old people were wondering, I wonder if that's the hunter that went over there, Wihinis that went over there, that never came back. I wonder if this is a relative. So, last year I asked my Tunshka, Bill Taylor, he's the radio announcer here. I asked him, because he was going to go and announce in Chiniki at the powwow. He's pretty close friends with Rod Hunter. So I asked Tunshka Bill to go talk to Rod, see where their name came from, the Hunter, last name over there in Chiniki, in that area. So apparently he did. He did talk to Rod about it. Rod Hunter, de Tunshka de Kshiwohadakak. He told me he did talk to him. Rod Kshiwohadak. They heard about this individual, John Hunter. He was over there, and I think he became chief at one of those reserves. This John Hunter, and I think the Hunter name stayed over there. At least that's my thought. The Hunter name is over there at Chiniki and in those surrounding Dakota communities. That individual, John Hunter, came from Keapaha, Turtle Mountain. So that's an individual that's in the history of Dakotas. Oyakapi, It's written down. And some of these individuals we didn't know about, but through research and that, we're beginning to find out some of this information. The individuals, the blacksmith family, the Taylor family that ended up in Santee, Nebraska, how did that happen? But of course, these are relatives. They know each other. So they visited, and some of them just stayed there. And that is how we conducted ourselves back in the day. We kept in contact. It doesn't matter how far they are, we stayed in contact. There's another individual. He's a hobo. He's a 1800s. He hobo he Portage La Prairie Iapi. He Dakota oyanke akapche. Han dedu re akapche. Han deche Fort Alice Iapi. Hitke nakure Dakota akapche. Unka he hobo kinde Khadamani echape. Khadamani. He tokah wata wakpohna uche. Wata wakpohna uga kakia. Fort Alice Iapi. Hechia ataku wichaka I. Hechia iga ke kuche dero hana di chuche. De Assiniboine River dero wake. Wakpatanka Iapi. O dedo wake. Kakia. Winnipeg hechi iaha de wakpatanka kinde. Ja he. Stede. Okay, he hobo ki he. Khadamani echape. O he wata o he wakpohna uga portage he hai ka he khadamani gde hechi. Chanka ksega pahaya ehna kache. O che hina wata kindina hacha ian ka he. Hacha head wata he head hinajika champ ka ksega pahaya ehna ke he wata awan ke he de wheel pick here. Wheel pick here han wata he hiuka han. Hata nasdo hiu check up portage hechi ta nasdo hiuga dead who kuya Brandon had hikaha hechona hedi had a catch champa haya hanake hake wata awanake hede wheel pick here. Wata gde hiuga Fort Alice ab hechi ichi. Hechi iga ke kukaha a ke Brandon ishtukte hedi najikaha. Ha ke champa haya ehanake ha ke wheel pick here. Ake wata gidi yaika wakpohna ki hideka ha ake head up the Brandon Portage head up the ken nasdogi ya nasdogi ega ake Portage hichi Portage head ika ha head ake wata head hinajinche ka head ake chanwi piki wata ki hidache ian tibet ke Winnipeg ho hechech oyaka pe ho tueg hede nina duza he wata hede dechia hishin ched yetoka dechia hiche I not show you pick here. Okay, what the dick here, I can't do yache. Portage Kishin said, I can't hate you, I can't head show you pick here. Hatchech Oyakape, hate to wake in the Khada money a chape. Heka 1800s, hey, huh? De chia Kapaha, Turtle Mountain, Iapi. I hate you, hate Tito Hoboke, he. I had that Dakota to Naksha hate you, hey, a kapka. Tawach e akapi pahak in the Kapaha Ape, Turtle Mountain. Ho had he akapka hetaha oyanke we chakipe natakabhan and ana a hiwichahanakape. Ho had otanka ohda kapi nawach tuwek in the Khadamani echape. Doket ker washichu chajata pehech ishtaku da washichu chaje yu hishini ni cheche. Hechel oyaka pido hoboke hede toch anke. Toch is his actions. The story goes, I was talking about it in Dakota. Back in the 1800s, whenever the steamboat started their way up the Assiniboine River here, whenever they had steamboats in Winnipeg, Manitoba, there's forts. There used to be a little fort in Brandon, and there's a fort up in Fort Ellis, it's called, up in the Russell area. The steamboat was employed, and he brings goods up the river on the steamboat. He delivers them to Brandon maybe, and up for sure up to Fort Alice. He'll deliver goods up there, and then he'll come back down again. That was his route. But these steam engines were run by coal and wood-fired, coal-fired steam engines, boilers. This individual that I was talking about, Khada Mani, rattles as he walks. He was living there in Turtle Mountains, and they claimed the Turtle Mountain as their home. That's where they lived. So I don't know how he did it, but he had kind of like a contract, an understanding with the person that ran that boat, that steamboat, or maybe it's the government. I don't know, but he had an agreement that he would sell cordwood, a cord of wood to the steamboat, to the manager of the steamboat. So that's what he did. And I heard the old guys talking about this, so back in 1960, somewhere in there. And what he used to do was he knows the schedule of the steamboat. So when the steamboat gets to Portage, Khada Mani will be there, because he had a cord of wood there. He'll sell that cordwood to the steamboat, and when the steamboat leaves, what he would do, Khada Mani, what he would do is he'll run from Portage to Brandon. Run, literally run, because he has to cross rivers. He doesn't follow the river. He cuts across from Portage to Brandon. Before the steamboat arrives in Brandon, Khada Mani will be waiting there already. Cross country, I guess it might be, 80 miles, Dakota might be from Brandon to Portage, or somewhere around 80 miles, right? Somewhere, I would say, 60 miles for sure, cross country. So he would outrun the steamboat from Portage to Brandon. He'll run, and when the steamboat gets there, then he'll sell him the cordwood, and then he'll wait, or he'll cut more wood. The steamboat will go all the way up to Fort Ellis. Fort Ellis is another 60 miles, 70 miles north, as the crow flies. As the crow flies, maybe 60 miles this way. But he knows the schedule. So he'll wait in Brandon, and when the steamboat comes back down and he gets to Brandon, he'll be there again. He'll have a cord of wood ready. He'll sell that to him, to the boat manager, conductor, whatever you call him. And when the boat leaves for Portage, he'll start running again. He'll run back to Portage. Before the steamboat gets down there to Portage, he'll be waiting there again. He'll sell him another cord of wood. And when the steamboat leaves, then he'll come back. So I don't know how many times a month, maybe once a month, or I don't know how many times the steamboat will come up the river, but he knew the schedule, and this is what he used to do. I thought this is a great man to do that, to run from Portage to Brandon, from Brandon to Portage back again, in order to make a few dollars for his Oyate, for his people over at that Turtle Mountain. I thought that was a great actual story, an actual individual that did that. And I was talking to. So that's 60 miles. That's 60 miles of running. That's amazing. And there's this earlier time, Oyaka earlier time, Tokahwashichu, they maybe Minnesota Hichi Hipe, Washichukin dina East Hachita hipe. Hina uge wihini hipe. Badayata. Hina wihinipe. Hana ku makoche toki tu head na kusto Iapi chimpe. Hache washichu head a hipe Dakota oyanki ki ed. Hetwe makoche wichaki pazukta. Odepe unka he hobo Iapi. Hobo kinde ob ukte shoakata kanumpape. Ha ishmani Dakota hobok de. Ha khana hiopka ha shoakata kide hiopka Dakota hobok de wichisa kib umani u. Sho kangdara icha tokap ka ha ish nashdog hiuche. Sho ka ob ianka. Apetu ata. Heche no khtayetu ka iwankap ka uzikir. Akhe khana ka akhe. Shoakata kdena hiu makoche kdena iwankap ka he. Isaki mani, Isaki b'nashdog mani apetu ata. Hechach naku Dakota wahana anka ape. He naku oyakape de woapikin de. Hetu hechat apetu ata ianka okihi. Hahina naku oyakape. Tuwe de techike. Apetu ata shunka okan Isaki b'ianka. Apetu ata. Hahina tuweke washichu ki hina shtadap kape de hobo hechum hede. Back in the early days, another individual, Dakota, maybe I think he might be present day where Minnesota, state of Minnesota is, used to be, the center of Dakota was in the northern part of Minnesota at that time. It still is today. The beginnings, the headquarters is in northern Minnesota. Back in the day, from the east, it wasn't Ottawa yet, it wasn't provinces yet. Back in the day, the individuals that were trying to start up a country over there, he brought a hunter, I guess, maybe to survey the prairies, the landscape and all that, an explorer maybe. He brought an individual like that, but I think this guy is a military member. They came to wherever the Dakotas were camped at that time, and then they told them that they're looking for an individual that would guide them out into the prairies. They wanted to employ somebody. So they selected one of the faster runners of that Dakota that were settled there at that time. So these two individuals, they're on horseback, two of them. So they hired this young Dakota. And they started out from that Dakota settlement wherever they're camped. And they came out into the prairies. What was written in the books in the history is that as these horse riders, as the hunter or the explorer, when they're coming west out into the prairies, as they're riding, that Dakota young man will be walking beside them. When the horses galloped, he'll be running beside the horses. When they stop, they slow down, he'll walk again. Like that all day. All day he walked and ran with the horses from sun up to sundown. All day. And it's recorded that these individuals, after they got home in their journals, it is recorded that this young man was doing that. Running beside and walking beside the horses all day. I don't know how long they're out here exploring, hunting buffalo or whatever. They wanted to, I think this individual wanted to experience a buffalo hunt or something like that. So he was guided by this young individual, Dakota individual, that ran and walked with the horses all day. So from sun up to sundown, he'll rest, and next day they'll start again. So he was recorded in the journals, and these two individuals was amazed. They were amazed at this individual, the stamina of this individual that can walk and run with the horses all day. And that's another story that's amazing, how far Indians back in the day could run, because back in those days, those Iapahas, like the runners, they'll run from community to community. If something happens in this community, they'll have runners, just like messengers, Iapaha. They'll run from community to community to spread the news, and that's how they know what's going on in their territories, I guess. So they're used to running all day. Of course, they weren't smokers or anything. So they're able to run all day. All they had was wakapampi ape. Wakapampi is the pemmican. Dried meat with choke cherries. They say it really gives you a lot of energy. That's all he had in water. He ran all day. And this is what the Khadab Mani probably had too, to be able to run from Portage to Brandon in one day, beats the steamboat before it gets to Brandon, right? So he had to run and swim these rivers as he went along. So it's recorded that this young man back in the early 1800s or maybe 1700s, he was able to run and walk with the horses all day, all that summer. I don't know how long this individual was there. But okay to ata uni maybe all summer he was with them. But that's an interesting true story, and again, and reminds me the stamina of the Dakota, right? And you hear about the Olympics, right? The Olympics, that you have today. And these long-distance runners, you've heard of them, like Tom Longboat. The Tom Longboat, he's a Iroquois Mohawk from out east. Tom Longboat. You've heard about his accomplishments as an Olympic runner, right? Tom Longboat. And there's Billy Mills. He's a Lakota, I believe. Billy Mills, again, in the Olympics. And, he's all been written about. They're really good runners. They're medalists, I think, both of them. But before the Longboat and Billy Mills, before they're allowed to compete in the Olympics, there's other individual Dakotas that had potential. Not only Dakotas, but other Indians that had potential to be long. They had potential. They're long distance runners, and I told you why they're able to run these long distances. Some of them back in the day were messengers. Some of them, just like Khadam Mani, he did that to make a living, from running from one city to another city all day. And one day he'll run back and forth. So back in those days, when the Olympics were going to start, some of these potential Indian runners that wanted to join the Olympics were disallowed. They're not allowed to run in the Olympics. Why? Because the Olympic, the committee, they said they had an unfair advantage. What the heck is that? Unfair advantage. You think that they'll put them up there, okay, let's win the Olympics, Canada or United States, let's win. No, they didn't do that. They're disallowed to run because they had an unfair advantage. What the heck is that? This is before, of course, Tom Longboat and Billy Mills. So that's the story. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you. How the young man back in the day had the stamina to run all day, run with the horses. You don't hear about that too much anymore. But back in the day, that was just what they had to do. I know back in the day, some of the old guys from Chinopok, that's Pipestone, Dakota Reserve over here. They'll have an individual there back in the day, a messenger. I think he might have started off on the eastern side of the Iapi, Turtle Mountain. Hata nasdugi check ape. Moose Mountain ape. That's where present day Carlisle is, and White Bear Reserve. There'll be messengers running from there to there in one day. That'll be another maybe 60, 70 miles across over there from the east end of Iapi, Turtle Mountain, in the west end, to the east end of Moose Mountain. In between there, that might be maybe about 60, 70 miles straight across. They'll have messengers running from there to there in one day, or a couple of days, or whatever it takes. That's quite a distance. They'll run that. So these are Iapi, or messengers, Hoshi hipi. Hoshi is, they bring, usually it's bad news or news that they should be concerned about. Ho is your voice. Shi is from shicha. Shicha is bad or something to be concerned with. Hoshi hipi. The old people here back in the day, they'll be talking about somebody. The way he come bearing sad news or bad news. They'll report that and then they'll continue. Aki ya doki toka. Hoshi ya. He went with a sad news, a news of concern. Hoshi ape. That's that term for bringing sad news or news to be concerned with. Bad news, if you want to call it that. He went or he came. And these are the runners that had the stamina. And all they used to carry is the pemmican. The pemmican is dried meat, pounded, maybe some buffalo tallow or the grease, and champa, the choke cherry. They'll pound the meat and the choke cherry, and then with the grease, that they'll put them together, make little patties, or you can have them dry as well. And they say that's really good. It gives you a lot of energy, and that's all they had. They'll have little pouches. They'll stuff them in there, and that's all they had. That's all they have during the day. You can't carry anything heavy, so that's all they had was the dry meat and the berries, and of course water along the way. There's water. You can drink water anywhere back in the day. Water was, it's not polluted like it is today. I wouldn't dare drink Cinnabon water today. But back in the day, it doesn't matter where you find water, it's pure. And that's all they had. All day, that's all they had to run, eat, and drink on the go. So that is, I think these are amazing individuals. I don't think anybody can do that. I think in the Olympic races, I think it's 26 miles or 26 kilometers. I'm pretty sure. Back in the day, that Dakota warrior, he would run that in no time. Like in a couple of hours. I don't know how long it takes, but it might take an hour or so, 2 hours or so to run that, no problem. So that's why they say they had unfair advantage in the Olympics. They didn't want to use them. I thought that was kind of hilarious, but that's what they said. One more story. Wakalapi Dakota. Another story, history, actual history. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, for those of you who know where Brandon, Manitoba is, if you know where Canada is, then in the central part of Canada is Manitoba, and on the middle of Manitoba towards the border there's a town called Brandon, Manitoba. One of the original forts back in the early 1800s, I think if I remember correctly, 20, I think, Brandon was starting to form. Anyways, back in those days, Dakotas, of course, roamed here and there, as I was explaining yesterday. Dakotas favored some places like Portage because of the fishing and the hunting, and they favored Brandon area because of the game and the hills, and there's a lot of game in there, and the fish is there too, stuff like that. So they favored Brandon too as well. So back in the day when just before the treaty making days, Dakotas were always saying, okay, where shall we live in our country? Where are you going to allow us to live? Because this is Dakota country. And it's unsettled, unceded. Unceded Dakota territory, where we are today, is unceded. So back in the day when they're allotting reserves or whatever, the Dakotas always saying, okay, like where, find us a place to live, geez, because, so if you know where Brandon, Manitoba is, there's a valley called the Grand Valley where number 1 highway goes through. From that Grand Valley highway bridge, just north of there, along the hills, that'll be like maybe 25 miles straight east of here. There's a land chosen, it was marked out as the original Dakota Sioux Valley Reserve was in Brandon. But for whatever reason, the Dakotas would rather be over here. They never hardly stayed on the reserve, so the government at that time said, okay, we'll close this one down. I don't know if they actually closed it down legally, I'm not sure. Maybe we should go move back over there. But so that reserve was there, and the Dakotas were always over here. So they said, okay, well, we'll just move the reserve over there. So how they selected this reserve and the boundary, how big the reserve is, it's not very big. The commissioner at that time, the Indian agent, they're standing on the hill over here, maybe 10 miles this way, I think, along the valley hills over here. And he told the people that time, he told the headmen, the head people that time, okay, he told them, select, here we go again, select the fastest runner you have, a young man. Tomorrow, he'll start running from this point. And when the sun comes up, he'll start running west. As far as he can go when the sun goes down, we'll use that as a measurement. We'll square that up, and your reserve will be that big. All right, so they said, okay. They selected their fastest young man, giving them instruction to walk straight in a straight line. Sun up to sundown. So that next day, again, pemmican, wakapumpi. Wakapumpi is pemmican, water. You had to recross this river, probably 1, 2, 3, about 4 or 5 times maybe recross this river, the same river. Anyway, so he starts out that morning, he started running. At the end of the day, he was way past the Verdun over there, Verdun, Manitoba. From Brandon, let's say from Brandon to Verdun would be, I would say, 50 miles maybe? Because from here to Brandon is what?
About 30, I think it'll be about 60 miles.
60 miles?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there, eh? Yeah, so from the hills of Brandon, over here, he started running. And I would say average, I would say about 60 miles. In one day, this young man ran 60 miles. And they told him to stop when the sun goes down. So when the sun went down, he stopped and he waited there until the Indian agent got there. Because that's going to be squared, and that's how big the reserve is going to be. The funny part of it is that when the Indian agent got there, that's like 60 miles. Holy man, 60 miles square. I guess he says, nope, too big, I guess he said. What the heck, jeez. Make a promise one day and break it the next day? So if the government of the day back then were truthful in what they said, our reserve would have been 60 by 60. But of course, they're never truthful. We know that of anybody, any individual Canadian citizen can say that the government is not very truthful. So anyway, so now our reserve is only like 7 by 3 or something like that. I mean, this individual can run that in half an hour probably, from going the long way this way. So anyway, that's another story on how these young individuals, young men back in the day, the stamina that they had, that they can run for a long, long time, like 60 miles in one day, run beside a horse, run and walk beside a horse all day for however long this expedition was, to run beside it and walk beside that horse. And it's recorded. All of these are recorded. The individual, Khada Mani, was able to run from Portage to Brandon in one day, load a cord of wood, wait until the boat gets back, load it up again, start running again. Before the boat gets to Portage, he's there again. Load it up, and then, that's what he did. So these are individuals that you don't hear about, that were here 100 years ago, 150 years ago. So we have quite a history as Dakota. Dakota did Oyanke, did Opionki Chiape. Dakota Makocha Ape, the territory of Dakota. Doket Kedoyankumpe, Hekta Ahana in the back day. Doket Kedoyankumpe, Doket Ked Ni Oyankumpe. Dakota Tamakoche, Ed Imahed, Odeche Doyankumpe. Hinach Denon Kiepe, we are still the same people. We are still the same people that were here when they were discovered by the people out east, and how we were back in the day. My kunshi used to say most of the young men, the soldiers or our security were well over 6 feet tall. A lot of them were 6 feet tall. And today, like I'm only like 5'6" or something like that. Like I'm not a very good Indian, but back in the day they were tall, and they can just run back and forth. As far as they can run 60 miles a day, easy. So that is some of the stories, true stories, mind you, and it's written in these. Some of them are written in these little booklets. These booklets are put together, researched by an individual, a good friend of mine. Mr. Ritchie, and very good booklets. A lot of work went into this. Actual events that happened from the 1600s to present day. And he uses these books to teach. And in this booklet, he started from 1779 to the 1900s. Just a little excerpt on this very first page that he's writing about history. 1779, De Peyster. De Peyster is a military official. De Peyster, fidelity of the Sioux, it says. And of course, you well remember that the Dakotas had military alliance with the British military, British Crown, and whomever this De Peyster, I think is how you pronounce it. His last name, Depeystr, De Peyster. I think that's how you would pronounce it, Dakota. De Peyster. He says, he talks about the fidelity of the Sioux. It's a short writing, a report that he made to his commanding officers, whomever out east. And this is what he wrote about the Indian, about the Dakota. June 1, 1779. He's writing to Michilimackinac. I think that will be like Detroit. I think Detroit of today. So June 1st, 1779, this military official by the name of De Peyster, and Ritchie took these off the transcripts of Fidelity of the Sioux, offered to attack faithless Indians, imprudence of encouraging Indian war. Who are the faithless Indians that the Dakota wanted to attack? And of course, at that time, the Dakotas were in military alliance with the British Crown, and it's still in existence. It's still valid today that Dakota can still have a military. So De Peyster writes this letter to Michilimackinac, to his higher commanders, June 1st, 1779. It says, Sir, on the 21st instant, I was honored with Your Excellency's letter of the 25th of December 78. The sending a war party to the portage, to the good portage, I think, is what I had represented to Lieutenant Colonel Bolton as by no means safe from so small a garrison in the present critical situation of affairs. I am glad to find you are of the same opinion. Further, he writes, Your Excellency may depend upon it that I never have nor never shall undertake any expense lightly at any post I may have the honor to command. I am extremely sorry to find there is a likelihood of the expenses at this post, rather more increasing than otherwise, as the Indians are growing very importunate since they hear that the French are assisting the rebels. The Canadians, he's talking about the Métis and the people around probably Fort Garry, somewhere around there. The Canadians, I fear, are of great disservice to the government, but the Indians are perfect Freemasons. Did you hear that? The Canadians, I fear, are of great disservice to the government, but the Indians are perfect Freemasons. When trusted with a secret by a Canadian, most of them being much connected by marriage. So, since my last letter of December of the 13th of May, Mr. Gauthier arrived here with a large band of Winnebagos and the Menominees, who had been with him to the Mississippi. I would fain have had them stay here till I received orders from Your Excellency, but they were impatient lest the Chippewas of the plains and the lakes should in their absence disturb their villages. They are of gone with promises to bring me some prisoners from Kaskaskias. Scalps I have positively forbid to prevent cruelty. At least they shone pawn old ones or those of innocent persons, a deceit I believe them guilty of. The Sioux Wabasha. Wabasha was on his march to join Mr. Hamilton, but stopped on hearing of his defeat. That's Hamilton's defeat down in Minnesota, down that way. He has sent the interpreter with his son and some young men with a pipe telling me that he wants my further orders, that he silenced the Renards or the Fox Indians and desires to know if I choose he shall strike the Sakis for having had talks with the rebels, which he is ready to do as well as all opposers of His Majesty's arms. Now that's the Dakota military under the leadership of Wabasha, the Red Leaf. Any opposers to the British, any opposers to the British military, the Dakotas were there, and you can hear it, you can read it here from the reports back in those days from military officials. So Wabasha is asking to strike the Sakis and the Fox, which he is ready to do as well as all opposers of His Majesty's arms. All opposers to the French army, the Dakotas were there to help. And that's just a portion of it. But what I'm reading here, what is most important to me is why didn't the military, the British military at that time, why did they not trust the Canadians or the people, the Washichu, the English and the Métis that were around that time? Why didn't they trust them, the British military? They only trusted the Dakotas and the Indians that are all allied with them. And why did he say the Indians are perfect Freemasons? What is a Mason? What is a Freemason? I'm asking you to do some research. Who runs these countries today? Why did he have to mention Freemason? Something interesting anyways. So these are actual events that happen. And here is the Wabasha. This is what he used to carry. Wabasha, when he was a brigadier general for the British military back in the day. Under him were 2,000, he commanded 2,000 Dakota warriors. He helped the British military fight against the United States and anybody that opposes the British military. Wabasha is Wakhbesha. And if you notice that, the Canadian flag has the red leaf in the middle. Just something for you to think about. So I thought I'll mention that some of the important individuals like Wabasha Wakhbesha and Khada Mani and John Hunter that went to Alberta and was there at the Calgary Stampede, the most photographed Dakota chief in Canada. These individuals that are our relatives that we know about, but we can certainly read about them in history. I thought I'll share that a little bit on how resilient we are as Dakota, Lakota. We have a lot of stamina. We can run with the horses, and we can run with the buffalo, if you want to call it that. So a little bit of history there, Mitaku Iapi. Hinai Yukchampo, think about that. And see what you think. Should we leave all that? Or should we regain that, retain that? This is our history. This is who we are. Di unkia pido, da unkota pido, na unkota pila unkota pi. Hadina it unkoa pi, iwon dakapi. We are written in these books. We are talked about in history because we are a great nation. Hohechitro mitaki pi togash hera hanakektedo. 15 minutes and then we'll get going.
mitä Iapi ito misa ito wicho we jistana pekte. Heshe naka ichi yupia wodake. Aha na Dakota tokoro peach Iapi na. He talked about how Dakota people were, like the survival, doing what they can, and how especially with the men, how they can work and run, and that's how we were. And to this day, I don't think nobody can do that, for young men to run or walk quite a distance. It takes a lot of not training, but it has to be within you, within yourself, as how you take care of your body. So I found it very, very interesting, some of the stories and some of the Dakota men, their names, what they did, and that's exactly how it was. It talked about the lands, that we had owned. Well, we still own it, where we lived. But it's just that, our reserves are becoming smaller and smaller. Often wonder why. I just wanted to share back in the 70s, late 70s, I believe, my late sister, she worked with Indian Affairs at that time. I forget what her title was, but she worked there for a number of years, and she got to go to a place where they kept all the old files, all the old things. It's called the archives, and that's where they stored everything. And she went there with another coworker, and they had files and files of a lot of information about Sioux Valley Reserve, at that time Oak River Reserve. There was filing cabinets filled with information. And I often, think about that, wonder about that, why are they kept there? They should give it back, to where it belongs. It belongs to us here in Sioux Valley. And she said she told me that she opened this one drawer, and there was a leather. It was wrapped up, a big piece of leather that was wrapped up. And when she opened it up and laid it out on the table, she said it was quite huge piece of leather. And on there was a map. And she carefully looked at it, and it said Oak River Indian Reserve number 58 at the bottom. And that reserve, was huge. She said, from here we are in Sioux Valley. I'm sitting here in Sioux Valley, middle of Sioux Valley right now. Just what Icheshu was saying, if you know where Brandon is, around that area, a little bit west maybe, we have a Hutterite colony, west of Brandon. Around there someplace, this map started from there and way to where he had explained it before, west of Verdun. That's how huge this map was, and that was Sioux Valley, Oak River Indian Reserve. It had the markings of the river, the Assiniboine River, the Oak River, a few other little creeks that were named. It had the town of Oak Lake, Griswold, and a few other little towns that was written right on there. So, how it got down to the size that we are living now, like, I don't know. It slowly kept cutting down, and now we live in a small piece of land, and we have a population of over 2,000, close to 3,000, maybe, close to 4. But not everybody lives right here on the reserve because there's no room, no more places to put housing. So, and I often wonder, wouldn't it be nice, if we can get all that land back? People will, have, nice big yards, can do whatever they want. But we can't do those things because we're just so tight in where we are. We can't. We can see what's happening in the next yard. Sometimes there's no privacy, but it's just becoming a town, a little city, Sioux Valley, because of the amount of homes that we have now. It's just side by side, all the way along down the road, up the hill. Everybody's just living side by side. It's not like how, it used to be, when houses were so far apart that you think you're the only one living on that land because you can't see, any houses. But, I just wanted to bring that up because, we have to, start doing something about it. Not only here for Sioux Valley, but I know other communities must have the same, going through the same situation, where their communities are small, getting smaller. We should all come together as Dakota leaders, work together, come up with something, come up with a plan, and start looking into these things because it's out there. I don't know why the archives or the museums are holding all that back, which can be useful for us to open up a lot of things. Maybe they don't want us to take over, on a lot of things, but, it's our land. We need the land back, to survive, because we can't go hunting anymore or anything like that, because our homes are so close together. There's limited areas where the men can go hunting. It's not fair, to them at times. Same with we can't really fish now because of the what we have in the waters. But these are just, a few things that I wanted to bring out and to get people to start talking about it, start the discussion, bring out your ideas. What can we do, to take our land back again. It's still our land, but, to actually own it and live on it, that's what needs to happen. We need to, make some noise, for the leadership to look around, and do something, start working on it. We have a lot of good things happening in our communities, but sometimes, we can't do a lot of things again, because of space. So we need to, sit down and talk to leadership, voice our concerns, our opinions, what our plans, we have. I have lots of ideas that, that I can bring out. But we need to start doing things, instead of sitting back, complaining about this and that, complaining about leadership, get up, do something. If you are so concerned, get up and do something. Everybody, each and every one of us we have a voice. Let's start putting it to work. Let's, make some noise, good noise. We don't need to get upset, and that's one of the things that we are so good at is, getting chazah, getting mad. We don't need to get mad. We need to do things in a good way. If we do these things in a good way, everything will fall into place. If we do it with a good heart, everything will fall into place. And it's not hard to talk, in a good way. We have to practice that. We have to, train our thoughts, to think good, to say good things instead of, trying to call down somebody. It doesn't happen. When we call down somebody, it's no use because it doesn't happen anyway. You might suffer from it, but not that person you're calling down. So, let's wake up now and let's do something to make our community better, because we always say we do it for our children. They'll be in leadership. Okay, let's show it to them in a good way. Let's start teaching them, how to have respect and to speak in a good way. That's what we need to do for our children as they get older, to be good citizens. So, Iapi, I thank you for listening. It's very concerning at times, but we started the talks, so, I hope to keep on going with that, because we need to. And at the same time, yes, we will still come back to the language and do the Dakota words and sentences and whatever that needs to be done. Sometimes, I like to talk about things that happen in the community, the things that we do. Like yesterday I talked about Iapi Flower Day. There's things like that. I still wanted to talk about, a memorial feast, and there's other things like name giving or, honoring a person. These things we need to we need to know and understand why we do these things. So mitake api tena hitchituia, and I thank you for listening.